and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. The US has defended its decision not to sanction Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. At a news conference, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Washington seeks to recalibrate, not rupture ties with Riyadh. He said the Biden administration is working to put the relationship with Riyadh on the right footing. Saudi Arabia says at least 5 of its civilians have been injured after Houthis' military projectile fell in the Jazan region. The kingdom's civil defense said the projectile's debris also damaged 2 houses, a grocery store and 3 vehicles. Meanwhile, U.S. State Department spokesperson said Houthis must cease their cross-border raids on Saudi Arabia. The International Atomic Energy Agency says North Korea's nuclear program is still a cause for serious concern. Addressing a news conference, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi termed the continuing signs of nuclear activity deeply regrettable. He said Pyongyang is continuously violating the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. More than 300 schoolgirls abducted in Zamfara state of Nigeria have been rescued. In a tweet, Zamfara's governor, Bello Matawalle, said the authorities faced a number of hurdles during the rescue process. Matawalle added that no ransom was paid for the students' release. The World Health Organization has warned that the world will not be done with the COVID-19 pandemic by the end of this year. Meanwhile, the South African variant of the coronavirus has been detected in the Philippines. In Pakistan, over 1,100 people tested positive for the virus, while 42 died overnight as the death toll tops 12,900. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.5 million lives and infected over 114 million people so far. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. The U.S. has defended its decision not to sanction Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. At a news conference, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Washington seeks to recalibrate, not rupture ties with Riyadh. Price said the Biden administration is working to put the relationship with Riyadh on the right footing. He said the U.S. is focused on the future conduct of Saudi Arabia. Price said future arms sale to Riyadh will also be evaluated based on U.S. interests and values. Meanwhile, the White House reiterated that Washington reserves the right to sanction the Crown Prince in the future if necessary.
Of course, we reserve the right to take any action at a time and manner of our choosing. I will note, Steve, that historically, the United States, through Democratic and Republican presidents, has not typically sanctioned government leaders of countries where we have diplomatic relations.
Saudi Arabia says at least 5 of its civilians have been injured after Houthis' military projectile fell in the Jazan region. The kingdom's civil defense said the projectile hit a public street, injuring 3 Saudi and 2 Yemeni citizens. It said the projectile's debris damaged 2 houses, a grocery store, and 3 vehicles. Meanwhile, the U.S. says it is considering taking additional steps to promote accountability for Houthis. In a press briefing, State Department spokesperson said Houthis must cease their cross-border raids on Saudi Arabia. Ned Price said Houthis' conduct will have to change to make progress towards peace. The International Atomic Energy Agency says North Korea's nuclear program is still a cause for serious concern. Addressing a news conference, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi termed the continuing signs of nuclear activity deeply regrettable. Grossi said Pyongyang is continuously violating the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. He said there is evidence that Pyongyang tested a cooling water facility at an experimental light water reactor last year. The IAEA inspectors are not allowed in North Korea, but they have been monitoring its activity via satellites. Earlier, a UN report warned that Pyongyang produced fissile material and upgraded its ballistic missile infrastructure. In Nigeria, gunmen have released girls they had kidnapped from a boarding school in the northwest state of Zamfara. State's Governor Bello Matawalle said the authorities faced a number of hurdles during the rescue process. In a tweet, Matawalle said the released girls are completely safe now. Matawalle added he initiated a peace accord which yielded a positive result while no ransom was paid for their release. Earlier, Zamfara officials said they were negotiating with the gunmen for the students' release. An armed gang had abducted about 300 girls from a government secondary school in the town of Jangabi on Saturday. Kidnappings for ransom are highly common across many northern Nigerian states. The government in India's northern Uttar Pradesh has imposed a partial curfew in the state capital to curb the farmers' agitation. BJP leader Aditya says the curfew in the state will stay till April 5th. In an act of solidarity with the farmers, dairy farmers of the state have stopped the supply of milk to the cooperative societies. Meanwhile, the assembly in Punjab has paid tributes to the farmers who died during the ongoing protest against three laws. A farmers' leader says they will block an important expressway near Delhi on March 6th. Over 200 farmers have died during the ongoing agitation, including 5 who committed suicide in demonstrations. The World Health Organization has warned that the world will not be done with the COVID-19 pandemic by the end of this year. Meanwhile, the South African variant of the coronavirus has been detected in the Philippines. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.5 million lives and infected over 114 million people so far. Details in the following report. Governments are advising the public not to let their guard down against the coronavirus as cases have started to increase again. In the U.S., the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director has warned that with variants spreading and a recent increase in infections, a fourth surge could occur before a majority is vaccinated. Mexico has started to ease the restrictions as cinemas and gyms are allowed to reopen in the capital. But it has kept strict social distancing measures in place along with reduced occupancy rate and continued sanitization. The WHO has also sounded alarm bells, saying the number of new global infections spiked last week for the first time in 7 weeks.
In the past week, the number of reported cases of COVID-19 increased for the first time in 7 weeks. You remember that I reported the virus was on a decline for consecutive 6 weeks. But first time in 7 weeks, we have a COVID increase.
In Europe, Spain is considering a green corridor for vaccinated British tourists if there is no EU agreement on vaccination passports. Battling the world's worst surge in infections, the Czech Republic has deployed more forces to help enforce the new lockdown. In France, COVID-19 related ICU hospitalizations have risen to the highest since December 1st last year. But there is good news out of the UK, where data has shown 80% reduced risk of hospitalization for the elderly after a single dose of the Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccine.
These results may also help to explain why the number of COVID admissions to intensive care units among people over 80 in the UK have dropped to single figures in the last couple of weeks, which is something I know that we all welcome.
South Korea says it is drafting an extra budget of over $13 billion to support small businesses and safeguard jobs. Meanwhile, China says it aims to vaccinate 40% of its population by June. Coronavirus has claimed 42 more lives in Pakistan overnight, taking the toll to nearly 13,000. The health ministry says 1,163 people tested positive for the virus in the last 24 hours. The ministry said the nationwide caseload has reached over 582,000. It said more than 547,000 people have recovered so far. The ministry added there are just over 22,000 active cases in the country. It said less than 2,000 patients are being treated in the hospitals for COVID-19. Armenia's Prime Minister says he is ready to hold snap parliamentary elections if the opposition agrees to certain conditions. This comes as thousands stormed a government building in Yerevan, demanding his resignation. Thousands of people gathered at another rally in the capital in support of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. Addressing them, Pashinyan proposed holding a referendum in October to adopt a new constitution. He called on parliamentary factions to promise not to elect someone else as premier if he steps down for early elections. Armenia has been in a political crisis since it lost territories to Azerbaijan after a 6-week-long conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh. A U.S. naval destroyer has docked on Sudan's Red Sea coast for the first time in more than 3 decades. This comes a day after a visit by a Russian frigate. Some 300 Marines aboard the USS Winston Churchill were greeted by a Sudanese military band in Port Sudan. U.S. maritime official Rear Admiral Michael Bays said Sudan's people have made progress to work for democratic principles. Talking to reporters, he said the U.S. Navy is in Sudan to reinforce those values. Port Sudan Naval Base official Colonel Ibrahim Hamad says Sudan is pleased to receive the American warship. Washington and Khartoum have started to rebuild relations after the U.S. removed Sudan from a list of state sponsors of terror. The U.S. and Mexico have agreed to work together to combat COVID-19 and cooperate on the economic and climate change fronts. U.S. President Joe Biden and his Mexican counterpart Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador discussed the issues at a virtual meeting. During the meeting, Obrador said it is important to maintain good relations with the United States. He said the two countries must coordinate to promote development with independence and autonomy. Obrador added respect for the sovereignty of both countries was key in an equal relationship.
Como lo acaba de expresar y me lo comentó.
That is why our relationship is strategic, and I'm also very grateful that you, as you just said and told me during the telephone conversation we had, you want there to be an equal footing in our relationships, for there to be respect for our sovereignty, and that is very important. We have to cooperate for development with independence, with autonomy.
Y eso es muy importante.
Top UN human rights experts have blamed Russia for attempting to kill Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. UN Rapporteur on Summary Killings Agnes Kalamard and Freedom of Opinion and Expression expert Irene Khan held a joint press conference. The two called for an international probe into Navalny's poisoning last year. They said the attempt to kill Navalny is part of a pattern of attacks on critics at home and abroad. The experts added the use of Novichok violates Russia's commitments under the Chemical Weapons Convention. Navalny fell ill last August and was flown to Germany, which says he had been poisoned with a banned nerve agent. But Russia denies any role in his illness and says it has not seen proof of poisoning. The U.S. state of Kentucky has declared a state of emergency after torrential rains inundated the streets. The emergency allows the governor to mobilize state resources needed to support the affected cities and counties. The state's National Guard has also been activated and is responding to high water emergencies. Meanwhile, authorities urge residents to remain indoors. A flood warning was issued for the Kentucky River near Ravenna's Estelle County until Thursday afternoon. And now it's time to take a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Indonesia's Mount Sinabung volcano erupts again, sending a cloud of hot ash as high as 3 kilometers into sky. Mount Sinabung's activity has increased since August last year. The alert for the volcano in North Sumatra province has been placed at second highest level. Indonesia's volcanological survey tweeted that no casualties were reported. The officials had earlier urged people to stay at least 3 kilometers from the crater. SINABUNG had been inactive for centuries before it erupted in 2010. In Brazil, some of the beaches have been covered by a tsunami of trash, leaving coastlines engulfed from plastic bags and bottles to children's toys and death wish. Environmentalists call for action as waves of plastic pollution are spoiling the beaches. More in this report.
In the spectacular Rio de Janeiro, the soundtrack has changed. It has gone from samba rhythms to the clash of glass and plastic objects. This is the result of an alarming level of pollution. According to the Oceans Brazil report, the South American country throws some 325,000 tons of plastic into the sea. A local environmental activist explains the gravity of the situation as he tries to clean up some of the waste on Ilha Catalão.
These are the 8 million tons of plastic that reach the ocean each year, suffocating marine life and threatening the existence of man on the planet.
Gomez is the president of Brazilian Environmental Protection Group, and his campaign to save Rio's beaches has attracted global attention.
70% of all this plastic here on the beach is made up of single-use plastic. From disposable containers to plastic cups and food containers, we can change that. We can buy food in a restaurant that doesn't use plastic containers. We can reduce the consumption of plastic within our homes and within our own lives.
Brazil trails only behind the United States, China, and India as the world's largest producer of plastic trash.
A Nigerian artist is rescuing empty coconut shells from the trash and transforming them into artworks. More about his unique art in this report.
Nigerian artist Nathaniel Hodunu cuts coconut shells and shapes them into leaf-shaped designs for his latest project in Lagos. His studio is located in the city's Badagry coastal area, where many coconut plantations are rooted. Hodunu, a trained art teacher, began experimenting with coconut shells in 2006.
In the school where I was teaching, the parents forum chairman gave me 2 empty coconut seeds and said, okay, my final teacher, I know you can do something with this. So that was when I started thinking of what can I do with coconuts here, what type of stuff is this? And from there, I started making some things, craft works, then from the craft work to installations.
The 49-year-old later began sourcing coconut shells to make more art pieces at local coconut oil factories. His artwork includes portraits, sculptures, plus home and beauty accessories.
My recent artworks. Now, I started introducing colors to some of the works because of what some of my clients are saying that, oh, guy, put some colors to this thing. And I titled this one, Vision.
The artist sells his work for between $130 and $1,300 depending on the size and complexity of the piece. Hodunu now runs a quarterly training program for art lovers and enthusiasts to learn creative ways of using coconut shells.
Along with every other area of life, the ongoing pandemic has influenced art as well. German artists portrayed their art by getting into air-filled bubbles to show the impact of social distancing during the pandemic. Details in the following report.
Keeping your social distance in a bubble. That is what several dancers of the Stuttgart ballet group did by dressing up in classical costumes and jumping into PVC bubbles. They were performing for German artist Florian Mannert's art photography project called Social Distance Stacks.
My
work deals very much with current social events and often also with problems that have certain insolubility for me, of which I stand as an artist. And then, of course, my thinking apparatus begins to think about how I can make the situation visible, how I can capture that. And of course, the lockdown and this pandemic situation is a very stressful situation for all of us, for art and me as an artist as well. And so, of course, the motivation was there. I want to make a work that deals with that.
The artist set up dancers, musicians, and actors in air-filled bubbles, hoping to show the impact of social distancing during the pandemic.
effort for this whole series of the social distance stacks is very big. One needs a tremendously large team in the background to get it all done. And there is also the problem that if the bubble is as hermetic as this one, it has a certain amount of body heat. So we only have a window of 10 to 15 minutes, not to mention the air is also getting less and less inside the bubble. After all, no air gets into the bubble.
According to Manert, the photo shoot was challenging, but worth the effort. The photo shoot is a representation of human isolation amid the pandemic and during the times otherwise.
Dolce & Gabbana mixed models with robots in a disco-like atmosphere as curtain came down on Milan Fashion Week. Bright colors, leopard prints and glittering gold and silver coats featured in the Dolce & Gabbana show, which was streamed on the brand's website and social media. The creative duo's 135 looks included jackets with big shoulders and a nod to the 1990s. They showcased faux fur and mini dresses resembling space outfits, but also see-through plastic overcoats similar to the protective gear worn by medics fighting the virus in hospitals. Models paired with two small robots created by the Italian Institute of Technology to celebrate the work of researchers in robotic technologies and artificial intelligence. The show ended the 6-day-long digital event. Most talks in Asia-Pacific have declined over news of resurgence of global COVID-19 infections. Mainland Chinese shares are leading the losses, dropping over 1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index and the Nikkei 225 in Japan have also slipped close to 1%. The ASX 200 in Australia has shared nearly 0.5%, but bucking the trend, Seoul's Kospi has gained over 1%. In the Pakistan Super League, Islamabad United will face Quetta Gladiators today at National Stadium, Karachi. The match was rescheduled for today after a United player tested positive for coronavirus. In a tweet, the Pakistan Cricket Board said all other players of the two teams have tested negative. Both the teams are pumped up to bag a win as they both lost the previous matches. United are at 4th place on the points table, while Gladiators are at bottom, losing all 3 matches. In football, Real Madrid have been held to a 1-1 draw at home by Real Sociedad, stalling their dash to move within 3 points of Liga leaders Atletico. This leaves Real on 3rd place, leveled with 2nd place Barcelona on 53 points. Still missing their key players, the Spanish champions hit the bar twice in the first half. The visitors then secured a lead in the 55th minute with a towering header from forward Porto. Real remained behind until the 89th minute when Brazilian Vinicius Jr. netted the equalizer with a deflected effort from inside the area. The draw leaves Sociedad in 5th place with 42 points, 6 behind 4th place Sevilla. Extreme weather conditions are life-threatening for many people around the world, but a veteran footballer has defied the sub-zero conditions to win the Baikal marathon race in Siberia.
83 runners from 6 countries challenged themselves to brave Siberian sub-zero temperatures. Participants raced across frozen waters of the world's deepest lake in Russia's Irkutsk region. For some of them, the race is not about competition, but more about discovering their limits in the stunning surroundings of the lake. The race organizer Alexei Nikiforov said they always ask people to avoid running for records.
It is the wrong place for setting up records. Baikal is different every year. The track is different this year too. Lots of people run just to get in touch with Baikal itself. And after all, they write about it.
Instead of well-known and documented extreme winds and snowstorms, the runners were greeted with sunny, dry weather. A former captain of Russia's national soccer team, Alexei Smertin, won the 42-kilometer race.
This marathon is not about the speed. It is more about the endurance, the display of character in terms of self-devotion. And I used it as I had devoted myself to soccer since the age of 5. Thereby, I managed to hold out the race with my stamina.
The 45-year-old footballer said his past soccer battles helped him build the much-needed endurance to win the race.
Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.